For me, that was something that was like beyond exciting. I was like, I get to make the cuts, I get to make the story, I get to have the audience feel what I want them to feel.
Presented by Sacramento Educational Cable Consortium. You're listening to Lights, Camera, Learn. All right, welcome to the last episode of the season for Lights, Camera, Learn. Our final guest of this season is Tanaya Safi. She's a junior at Intercom High School. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So you're headed into the final stretch of the school year. How's it feel?
Definitely to start a little stressful, for sure. Being a junior is always stressful. Going into senior year is exciting, of course, but hitting the home stretch with APs wrapping up, finals wrapping up, and then summer activities looming over the corner, so it's more than exciting.
I'm sure it is. So if you look back at this particular year, what are some highlights from a media production standpoint for you?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of media, I had the privilege of being in Miss May's classroom for the first half of my year. So I was in the broadcast media pathway, CTE. And so in that class, I specifically was working a lot on Tiger Talk. And so
what's Tiger Talk?
So Tiger Talk is Intercom's kind of like newscast, kind of giving our school a little bit of like what's going on campus, fun segments, really cool just news on campus.
Yeah.
And we put it in a video/broadcast format. And then every single Tuesday and Thursday, we publish it for the school every morning.
Okay.
And so every third period, teachers will share it with their classes, share them on the updates going on at school. So it's a really cool way for our school to kind of create also like a really fun communication going on, but then also really exciting ongoing project in the broadcast media pathway, which is always super fun for all the students. And then they get real life experience, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that I was very privileged to be able to do in that course, is being able to take on every single role at some point.
So you were like anchor, producer, editor.
Yeah, definitely. And Miss May, our broadcast media teacher, she encourages that. She encourages everyone to, if you take the course, to try everything, is going from being someone in the back room to being someone on the anchor desk, or being someone to produce or sit and be like quiet on set. So she wants you to try everything. And so I think especially media oriented, I think that was some really exciting stuff that I got to work with, is learning how to professionally use Adobe, Premiere Pro, and like actual like hard and soft skills, but then also being able to like engage in the other storytelling aspects of media. And those are like areas that I've been able to grow throughout this first half of the year while I was in her class, for sure.
So of all the roles that you filled on that particular program, which did you prefer?
I would say in terms of behind the scenes, I really love editing.
Okay.
I really found a passion in it. Just something where I can lose my time was something that was really interesting, is like being able to work with Miss Mays. I was able to skip the first year of the CTE pathway just because I had already a good base knowledge in WeVideo coming in from middle school. And that's typically what the first year is training students in, is WeVideo.
Okay.
So coming in, I had already had that base knowledge. So she was like, no purpose in you redoing all of that. Let's move you straight to Adobe. And so when I came in, I was already starting to work on Adobe Premiere Pro. And so that was something that was like a new challenge for me, was like figuring out where like all of the many buttons on the screen. And being able to, as a student, it's a really cool new skill, right? Being able to create videos. And so that was something that was really exciting in terms of the video process, broadcast process, was the editing behind the scenes, because you also get to choose. You get to take all this like footage that you get on all the raw footage, and you as an editor get to choose what goes in to create the story.
I couldn't agree more. It's the most fun.
Exactly. And so for me, that was something that was like beyond exciting. I was like, I get to make the cuts, I get to make the story, I get to have the audience feel what I want them to feel. And so that was something that was super exciting for me. And then in terms of on-screen, I really loved anchoring. I really, really did love it, because I would have a partner, a friend, maybe, classmate, and we just having that presence is super exciting. Being an anchor, you have to have presence. You have to have confidence. And so that's something that I got to put my feet in and dip my feet in the water, be like, this is something new, a little out of my comfort zone when I first tried it, but it definitely gets you used to being confident in front of a camera. And just even in other settings in general. I think that's why I really enjoy that aspect of it. And then just being able to like bounce off of whoever you're anchoring with, you know, that's also always exciting. So that was definitely the on-camera part. So those two parts were definitely the most exciting for me.
Was this the first year you anchored?
Actually, no.
Yeah?
I did anchor my sophomore year of high school, so that was last year. I did get to anchor a few shows this year, definitely a lot more.
Okay.
For the first half of the year, I would do like every other show.
Yeah.
So like it was a lot more for sure now that I got the swing of things. But even last year, she would still encourage students who are new, maybe even like within your first month, to be like, just sit there, try it. You know, it's not scary. So I think that was something that was really exciting, just getting to try it. Like maybe, I know originally when I tried it, it was like, oh, this might not be my thing. Yeah. But it was ultimately, after I did editing and did some of the other positions, I was like, wait, maybe I want to try it again.
Yeah.
And so then I tried it again, and I was like, wait, no, this is a little better. This is a little easier. And like the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, right?
But could you tell among your other students, Tanaya, which ones just did not prefer that at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could definitely tell the difference.
Even though they had a chance to try it, that was it, right?
Yeah. But even then, anyone you'll talk to in the classroom, you'll be like, even if it wasn't like their thing, like there's always something in the process. There's so many different parts of it. They'll find something. But just the fact that she allowed you to try everything was super important.
Oh, I can see that.
And I think that was a big thing for me is, even though like maybe I really didn't like the producing part, like per se, or making the scripts or something except other aspect, I found something I did like. Yeah. And every student does. And so I think that's something that's super important, is still getting to try it. So I think that's why it's a great program overall.
So we were talking earlier about the woman who teaches, she's one of two teachers at Franklin High School, and she does the same thing. And one of her previous students, been at it for about 10 years now. She ended up loving editing so much, she's now an editor at Warner Brothers. So she's gotten to work on a couple of TV shows, a couple of movies. She just realized she had no desire to be in front of the camera, but she loved, as you were describing, the whole editing process. Yeah. So I think it's important for people listening, and students in particular, to understand there are pathways for careers, that you don't have to be in front of the camera to have that.
Definitely. Like, I couldn't agree more. I think even like some of my like closest friends, like they'll come into the classroom a little timid, maybe a little shy, but just like you mentioned, getting to try things, figuring out what they like, and then ultimately finding, by the time you reach your third year in the class, which is like the last year of the program, you usually stick with one thing, and the one thing you're good at. And so that's where that gets exciting, is especially by the time you reach your third year, everyone has like their set spots, and it's like a flow. When you get into, every time we record the show, it's like a big flow production going on, and it's super cool how lively the classroom becomes every single time.
I can imagine. So you kind of jumped ahead to the question I was going to ask you about. What does that flow look like in creating Tiger Talk? What's a typical day of production look like?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of a lot of the stuff I can recall is, you start in, Miss May will always give you a little elbow bump. She would have us all come in, sit down. She'll be like, okay, everyone, we're filming our Tiger Talk today. And then everyone is set. So typically she'll send out a sign up for what you want to try, if you want to shadow something, anything like that. Like, what do you want to do in terms of helping with the production process? And so usually you'll sign up ahead of time, whether you want to be an anchor, editor, this, that, whatever you want to do that day. Then on that day, she'll kind of do a rundown. She'll be like, hey, these are the things you've signed up for. If any changes happen, she'll reconfigure it a little bit. Everyone will get to their spots. Yeah. And so, like, whether that be, like, people that are outside on the anchor desk, people, like, camera operators still outside, and then, or those in the back room. And so that's also really exciting, is you even have, like, shadows. Like, if you've never done something, you can, like, shadow someone who's done it, or maybe a little, like, especially TriCaster. That's a big one we'll tend to see people shadow for, because there's so many different buttons. Yeah. And it's definitely a lot more technical than you'll find some of the other positions to be. Maybe some require more charisma and just like presence, like anchoring, or some do require technical skill, like the TriCaster, editing, etc. So you'll tend to find people who shadow for those, which is also really exciting, and you kind of get like a buddy to talk to while you're like doing your stuff, you know. And then of course the on-air sign goes on, right? That goes on outside the classroom, and everything goes quiet, right? So
how much time before that is there? So the class itself is how long?
The class, I believe, is around 80 minutes. Our typical schedules are around 80 minutes. Usually we'll take around, I would say, 3/4 of a class.
Gotcha.
Filming one episode or
Yeah.
one show. So that typically, and all of that includes all the way from her setting it up, getting everyone to their spots, the actual recording, and then clean up and wrap up,
Got
right?
it.
So
Yeah.
it includes all of that. And even then, usually sometimes if we start, like sometimes in the middle of class, it'll go till the bell, or if we start in the beginning of class, everyone gets like time at the end to do whatever they need for the other
Right.
other assignments in class. So the flow works up pretty well, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a lot of work. Like you'll tend to see like once it's going, like there's so much that gets shot that never gets used.
Oh, yeah,
You know?
I'm sure.
And so definitely going through those retakes, at least like for the more experienced anchors, you'll tend to find that like you'll do a whole rundown once or twice and it's done.
Yeah.
But like for people who maybe are trying it for the first time, you know, then you'll might have like 3 or 4 different takes, you know, and even then they'll be in like parts, you
Yeah.
know? And so that's where you'll tend to find like sometimes the time consumption and then like the starting and the stopping and all those
Right.
different things, components that go into the show that maybe not a lot of people realize.
So, you know, Miss May had been a reporter and anchor on Channel 10. What kind of input did she give you from an anchor perspective, since she had that experience coming into the classroom?
Definitely. I would say the main thing that she would always tell us for
Yeah.
anyone who's trying out anchoring
Yep.
is that you're the only one who knows what you're supposed to say because you're
That's
reading
true.
you're reading the teleprompter,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And the main thing is like even though that teleprompter is in front of you, no, like the person that's watching the final cut doesn't know what's on the teleprompter.
They do not.
So
That is true.
you can say like you can mess it up, and if
Yeah.
it still makes sense, keep going.
Yeah.
You know, like just keep going and like don't act like there's a mistake because no one knows there was a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that was a big thing that helped me is I'm a very improv driven person.
Okay.
And so sometimes having a teleprompter would actually be a struggle for me. And so having
Interesting.
to read it word by word, it would become either monotone or robotic.
Yeah.
And that's where her big piece of advice for me was do improv, like
Right.
make it your own. Like if you feel like a line doesn't match, like maybe even though when you went back and like you looked at the scripts and practiced a little bit before you went to sit on the anchor desk and it seemed fine, like even you're in the show, you know,
Yeah.
in your recording, you can change it up. That's okay, you know? Of course, don't make it like drastically different,
Right.
but like if an and or a but doesn't seem familiar or flow off the tongue the right way, omit it.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that I was very glad that she was open to, you know, like she wasn't very, she was very free flowing in how the student wanted to be creative on camera.
That's really good.
So
yeah,
that's
could see
something I
that.
appreciated. And that definitely helped me in terms of her experience anchoring,
Yeah.
and especially because it's a very high energy environment. You
Yeah.
know, like sometimes
Yeah.
maybe something is wrong in the script all of a sudden. You know, maybe you have a technical error. You still have to keep going, right?
Absolutely.
And those are things and skills that she taught us how to do very well.
Okay. So, you know, I think if I read something that you had sent me that you've started doing this about when you were in 7th grade, is that right?
Yeah,
So what
definitely.
prompted that?
I had a teacher named Miss LaChapelle in
Okay.
7th grade, and the very cool thing was I went to Leading Edge, which is a very small middle school,
Uh-huh.
and the school prided themselves on having a technology class.
Okay.
So we would take tech as an actual subject, which was very, very cool, starting 7th and 8th
Oh,
grade.
yeah.
And not many schools at the time when I was still in middle school had, now tech is embedded in every single class,
Yeah.
right? Like you don't have to have a technology class in order to be learning about tech constantly,
Sure.
right? But at the time when computers were still new and the school was just built, having a tech class was such a big driver for bringing students to the school, right?
Okay,
And
yeah.
so that was a really cool thing about attending the school. And so when I was in 7th grade, I got the privilege of being in that class for 7th and 8th graders. And in that class, one of the assignments was we had to make kind of like a creative story. And you and a small team of kids would like band together and you would go on, like you would just like roam campus, create some kind of like really niche, creative, out
Yeah.
of this world story, film it, and then you as a team would edit it together
that's
on
fun.
iMovie.
Right.
And so we used iMovie at the time. And
Yeah.
so we would all have like a class set of Macs. everyone would use those to edit, and you would do it like with your friends, with as small of a group, as big as a group, and you would see, I remember some of the most creative videos I would see when we watched them at the end of that unit in class all together. We did like a screening / popcorn,
Sure.
really fun thing, our teacher did. And so what we did is we would have them all filming on the projector in the classroom, and like one of them was like about aliens, and another one was like about like the smelly cheese, thing.
What
and
was
like
yours?
I think ours was about kind of like a mystery, like treasure hunt kind of thing.
Okay.
I don't quite remember the full exact details of it, but ours was more of like I think it was like a classmate gone missing, trying to find the classmate, and it was like a treasure hunt, and then we went around and we had like our like other staff on campus like help us out by like placing clues in places,
right,
and all that kind of like fun stuff.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And then of course using like the actual editing skills that we had to make it even more magical, right?
Yeah.
Like adding like little sparkles and the bedazzle and so that was exciting. So that was definitely like my first introduction in 7th grade.
Okay. So did you, even before that, did you go watch movies and go, wow, I kind of wish I knew how that happened, or maybe that's something I might want to do?
Yes, I think me and my family, we love like cinema, film, etc. Like that's something that like we'll do every single day sitting in our living room. We'll all be like, there's always like something playing on the television, always.
Yeah.
And so like every time we sit as a family to like watch a movie or something, we talk during movies, and so like we'll talk about how like wait,
but
like,
not in the theater.
Yeah, not in the theater.
Yeah.
But we'll definitely talk at home, and like even like as I grew older and I realized like of course like some things are just like in cinema like assumed, or like they're kind of like cut for the magicness of a film.
Yeah.
And so like my mom and me love to like talk about that, being like, wait, where did that come from? And we're like, wait, maybe they just forgot to like omit this one part of it in a film. And so I loved being able to like put pieces together, like maybe like and like kind of find like the also unrealistic parts of a film.
Yeah.
Those were some really cool things. I guess the second I started watching movies and actually understood the process of how you make them, and it's not just like a one shot kind of thing.
Right.
I definitely understood a lot. I was very interested in the technical part of it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Of like
okay.
that, I was a very keen child of like, I want to understand like where did they make the cut in this little part, or like, and then like, okay, now that they've made this cut, like, oh wait, like why does like this person's like hair look a little different in this one than in this one, or like something like that, And that stuff was also very like interesting to me, and like that's why I guess I got really interested in editing.
Yeah.
Is like trying to make it, that cool thing about editing is you try to make it as smooth as possible, right? So that the audience doesn't realize those cuts or et cetera and all those things. But inevitably there will be a few where you'll see like, wait, like, that wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
So those would always catch my eye as a kid. And that's where I was like, wait, editing is really cool,
Yeah.
Like otherwise, like they get to do all the magic and all these special effects and et cetera. So that was really cool for me.
What kind of movies do you and your family watch?
We are definitely big on Disney. We love all Disney-oriented films.
Yeah.
Of course, like as a kid, we watched like all the princess movies, of course. But now, of course, as a family, we watch like series. Like we would watch like The Mandalorian and all of these other like cool Star Wars ones, or like we'll turn on a Marvel movie every once in a while. We're very I would say like the big brand movie kind of family. But even then, sometimes like me and my sister will go to a movies like on the Tuesday family nights, and we'll see something that maybe like isn't as popular, but like still catches our eye, And so I definitely think we're definitely a movie family in terms of being able to bond. Like if our family's ever like bored on like a Sunday like afternoon, we're like, okay, let's go see a movie,
Yeah.
And so that's something that we love to do as a family.
That's great. So, you've entered the SIVAs, and then you also have won in the C-SPAN documentary. That's quite an accomplishment. So, describe the difference between the two, because obviously C-SPAN's got a totally different reach, much broader. Not to say anything bad about the SIVA, because it's part of my organization, but it certainly isn't the C-SPAN. So, we were talking a little bit before tonight about your SIVA entry and the same going to the C-SPAN. So just talk about, the difference in the topics that you've submitted for.
Definitely. So I've partook in C-SPAN for 3 years now. First time was in 8th grade. My second time was in 10th grade of high school. And then this year was my 3rd time. And then in terms of
even just doing that in those age groups, that's quite an accomplishment.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think, I guess even just to give a little bit of context, is in 8th grade when I started doing it, it was again part of our curriculum in middle school.
Yeah.
Is I had a teacher, Mr. Lang, and as part of our humanities course, he had it as a 4 to 5 month project in the class.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it was like the biggest chunk of our grade in our humanities class was C-SPAN.
Yeah.
And that's where I got interested, really interested in wanting to continue to do it on my own in high school, was because of it being integrated in my curriculum the way it was in middle school.
Yeah.
Is he would we would have I think for a full stretch of 2 months, all of our class periods, we had a block schedule.
Okay.
And we would get it all dedicated to C-SPAN. And so that's where I really got interested in, where he put a camera, he had our phones, he had a whole bunch of tripods. He's like, take something, go out in your community, find something you care about, and create something.
Yeah.
And the free nature of the way he had done it allowed everyone to find something they were interested in, find a couple other classmates that were interested in the same thing, create a team, and then create real world experiences and skills.
That's really unique
cool.
for any school, but let alone 8th grade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the way our school is we were a project-based school. So we never got homework either. So
Really?
that was a really cool thing that I liked about the school too, was we were all project-based. The way we learned was everything was a project. You would never see us have reading assignments or the typical thing you might see in a traditional high school or a traditional middle school. So that's where C-SPAN was so exciting for everyone, is because our school also had a history of getting honorable mention and 3rd place in the C-SPAN competition. He never required that you had to submit it, but it was still, the assignment was at least complete it. And then if you think your project is good enough, submit it, at the end of January. And so that was something that was really cool then. And so at that time, I had done it on financial literacy. And I still am very passionate about that topic, is if schools provide all the A through G requirements, right?
Yeah.
However, they don't teach real life skills. Was my main component to that, was why don't schools teach it? So that documentary in particular was exploring it through our school, of why doesn't our school do it? And so then we interviewed admin. We interviewed a really cool organization called Next Gen Personal Finance, and they are the ones who actually now have made it a state requirement through law.
Really?
So I was fortunate enough to meet the CEO prior to it becoming law, and as he was working on it in California. So he was talking about his process and everything of how he's trying to get it implemented in California. So that was the kind of the gist of that one. And I worked with 2 other peers on that one, and we ended up winning honorable mention my first year.
Did you really? Congratulations. That's pretty good.
Especially for middle school. It was definitely a big accomplishment.
And this is a national competition.
Yes, so they get thousands of entries every year.
Absolutely.
So definitely, I would say that was a kind of a cornerstone of wait, this is something that is really cool, really interesting. And of course, the incentive of getting a little bit of money, your teacher gets a little bit of money, it excites you more to be I want to do it again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And even just that story, for me, the biggest part that I loved was going out and interviewing people. That was my ultimate thing of I get to record people who are experts, and I get to talk and learn and in front of people who know what they're talking about.
See, as an adult, I think that's unusual for anybody, no matter what age, to like.
Yeah.
Did you find that was unusual for your fellow classmates to love doing that part of it?
I think that was very uncomfortable for a lot of students.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable no matter what age you are. I mean, I don't mind it, but I've been doing it for a long time.
No, yeah. Definitely. I think so many students were very uncomfortable with going out because they never experienced it. So the fact that our teacher, Mr. Lang, put us in a scenario where we did have to go make real world connections. We did have to go talk to people and adults and do something that we've never done before. I think that's where I got kind of my first taste of, wait, I really like advocacy, or I really like these other aspects of how storytelling and film can help me do advocacy. That's what C-SPAN was for. And that was really
That's an interesting connection. It's a great connection, but that's great that you put that connection together.
And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize about media, right? Just in general, is media as a whole is used to take a complex issue and make it accessible to the public.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And that, at least that's my big intent and main purpose and driver for why I love media and video is, and why I loved C-SPAN so much and CVAs is I'm taking something I genuinely care about that maybe I have a little bit more knowledge because I'm interested about, but then turning it into a fun format and a digestible format for someone else who may not be as knowledgeable about the subject area.
So what was your second topic?
So my second one in 10th grade, that was around electric vehicles.
Oh, okay.
So that one was a really cool one, but I did that solo that year. So that was a lot of work for sure.
Yeah.
10th grade.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So that was, but I did it as, I kind of killed like two birds with one stone. With that one was, I did as part of my personal project for 10th grade. So everyone has to do like kind of a capstone personal project. So I was like, that was my, because I had skipped it freshman year because I just simply had no time in high school to take on an additional project that's not incorporated in your school, you know?
Yeah.
So I had to sadly not do it in 9th grade, but then 10th grade, I was like, okay, now they're giving us time to do a personal project. What do I want to do? I was like, I want to do C-SPAN again.
Yeah.
And this time I would be competing in the high school bracket, which is even more competitive. So middle school kind of has its own little bracket, but high school has a different division kind of, and they get graded a little differently, of course, considering different age groups, maybe access to different materials or resources. And so that was something that was really interesting to see at that time.
Yeah.
And then in addition to the fact that at that time when I was doing electric vehicles, my family owned 2 electric vehicles.
Okay.
And so that was really exciting for me, was to talk about, are they really green?
Yeah.
That was the question that drove the whole documentary. So I talked to a few experts that actually engineer electric vehicles. I've talked to people that actually see the climate change impact of it, and et cetera.
Okay.
So I kind of, the way that documentary...
These were all local experts that you talked to?
Some of them were, while some of them were in the Bay. So all of them were in California, because especially with California's emission standards, we were kind of a driving force in electric vehicles at the time. So that was why a lot of the experts I talked to were California oriented, just because California had a higher date for which they wanted electric vehicles implemented compared to the whole nation.
Sure.
And so it made it easier to find a lot of people who were in the field in California compared to other places. However, they weren't super local. So that's why the biggest issue for me at that time was interviewing experts via Zoom.
Yeah.
I had to do all of my interviews via Zoom, and if they were in person, it would be like super brief, and et cetera. So like getting the actual availability was super difficult for this one. And that's where I kind of changed it up by the time I reached my third one, is I realized like the scope or the broad audience in which I had chosen for that one, because electric vehicles is a very big topic.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely incorporates at a national scale, right? And also a state scale. And so that's where I realized like sometimes it's really hard as a student to be able to get the right experts, the right resources to be able to access something, a topic that is so widely like
and your time is pretty limited because you have class
up
to the point that you can finally talk to somebody, whereas they've got intermittent time that might happen when you're in class.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was actually, I was very fortunate that at that time I was still in Miss May's class and I had her for the whole year, so I had her as a subject. So I would take interviews during her class.
Okay.
So she allowed me that space because of the fact that it is a media class. She allowed me that space to be able to take interviews during that time, and plan with my like my peers if I needed feedback, to allow me that time to do that. And so like sometimes even if like we had an assignment going on, she was like, I know you're working really hard on your C-SPAN. Do that instead.
Yeah.
And so she would encourage me to do things that I was very passionate about.
That's
great.
great.
And so that was really exciting. And then by the time I moved on to my third attempt this year, I was like, had to learn a few things, right? Had to learn that, hey, maybe now that I'm a junior, I can't do it alone.
Yeah.
So I found a partner. So my best friend and myself, her name was Juhi, we chose to do it together. And so then we were like, okay, now we realized now for my previous 2 attempts now that I'd done it, and she was new, she hadn't done this before.
Okay.
So, but she was still very interested. She was like, I love the work you've done in the past. I want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, let's do this. You know, you're my best friend. Like, why not? And so we were very fortunate that we had also very different skill sets. And so it made it a lot easier to work together. And so I feel like sometimes you'll find finding the right partner is important.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was something that we heavily considered before even saying, yes, let's do this together is, yes, we're best friends, but will we work together well in getting something as big as this accomplished on time?
As you're obviously using this next year to plan for your future, what does that future look like? And I know you referred to the policy and everything. Does that look like going into law, staying in media, or some combination, or none of the above?
I definitely would say combination is, I
Okay.
guess what I would say is it would be a combination of both.
Yeah.
I had the privilege of talking to a former Supreme Law clerk recently, and she talked about her background in journalism
Okay.
and media.
Yeah, I could see that.
And so she talked about how, and she now does nothing oriented to the fact. Now she does appellate law and et cetera.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to her because I kind of have the same interests. And she was like, media and journalism are amazing foundations for any career choice.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more. I think she explained it very well to where in our current modern world, you have to articulate the language in such a way to be able to captivate an audience.
Yep.
And you learn that so well through media and journalism courses. And that's something you have to do greatly in the law field. You know,
Yeah.
you have to be able to write briefs. You have to use the language. You have to read the language. You have to analyze the language in so many different ways. And if you don't have a good foundation, it can
Yeah.
get very hard to be successful in that career. And so I think that's where I see that combination, right?
Yeah.
That's where I want to see that combination moving forward into my career is I want to be able to use the media, like continue media oriented courses and education,
Yeah.
journalism, English language, literature, all of these things that can build this strong foundation. And I have a passion for it. It's like my creative hobby,
I can tell.
right?
Yeah.
And so I don't want to let that go.
Yeah.
Who would ever want to let that go? And so that's something that I want to carry as kind of maybe going forward, even if I don't pursue it as like an actual journalist,
Yeah.
or going into a broadcast or newscast kind of oriented field, I can still take the skills I learned here. And like I've said, of that my passion of turning these big political ideas,
Yeah.
right? Then I love policy and I love being able to, these are things that affect everyone's daily lives,
Yes.
right? And then turn it into something that's digestible, right? Something
Yep.
that the public can understand. That is where I see myself, and
Yeah.
that's something I want to continue doing, whether that be I go into constitutional law, whether that looks like I actually sit in a courtroom,
Right.
or whatever that may look like. At the end of the day, you are always the person who is trying to build someone else's life up, right?
Yeah.
And that requires a good foundation in media and journalism to be able to articulate it
Yeah.
well. And so I couldn't see myself, even though, yes, I might be leaning more towards a policy-oriented career path, I couldn't see myself doing it well without media and journalism.
Well, I think that, having studied journalism myself and done some of it part-time and worked in media, I think the key to that, that I think applies to being in law too, is you have to have an innate sense of curiosity. And you kind of alluded that with yourself in terms of you want to know how stuff works, right? I mean, do you feel like that's a trait that you bring into just your life in general and these couple of career choices?
I definitely think that's a part of who I am.
Yeah.
No doubt of the curiosity of just wanting to understand.
Yeah.
Is like you'll find a lot of people who might be really good at memorizing or et cetera.
Right.
But I, especially even in a math class, you'll always find me being the one who raises my hand because I'm like, I understand that like I know how to do addition,
Yeah.
but why does it work?
Yeah.
Like that's me usually. And I always ask like those dumb questions. And sometimes even like your math teachers will be like, sometimes it just is the way it is.
Yeah.
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 And sometimes that's just not enough for me. It's not enough. And so that's definitely something I always bring to a table
Yeah.
or any team is like my ability to want to, even though, yes, like I know it works, I can do it well, I can do the workflows, etc. I want to understand how it works.
Yeah.
I want to actually be an expert. I want to call myself an expert, but I can't do that without fully understanding it. And that is something I feel like I do bring to a lot of teams or any project I
see that.
pursue.
Yeah.
However, I don't think it's, of course, the only trait. Everyone is kind of a mosaic of
Yeah.
so many different traits. And so definitely bring in a lot of other aspects. But definitely, I think that has sparked a lot of interest in I definitely hold this want to try and do everything kind of attitude to almost everything that I see.
Yeah.
It's like I'll find everything so interesting and want to do it all. But a really cool mentor told me this once, is like, you can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Yeah.
And so that is something that you also have to keep kind of in your back pocket of like, yes, all of these things are super exciting, but you have to pick and choose the ones that are most exciting.
That's true.
And so those are definitely things I'm still working on, you know?
Yeah.
It's not saying yes to everything, saying no to a few things.
Well, and now's probably a good time to start learning that anyway, because the older you get, the more you don't say no, the more likely you're going to stress yourself out.
Yeah, no doubt.
And bring too many things onto yourself. You know, so one of the things I know that is students are struggling with, teachers are struggling with, is the use of AI in the classroom. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that? Or just the use of AI, period?
Nowadays, you'll see students and teachers using it.
Yeah.
And especially with the current rise in AI, I have very mixed feelings about it.
Sure.
There is good and bad to AI, no doubt. Of course, in terms of like just a broad overview, I would definitely say in terms of the economic and environmental standpoint, you'll tend to find a lot of people who are against AI.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
You'll tend to see a lot of the resources it uses up and et cetera.
Yep.
In terms of just the actual, just students being able to use it. But in terms of, but I think those are things that even engineers and people who are developing AI are continuously working on, and I don't see it being an issue as we move down the road. I definitely see it being a place where people will continue developing, making it more efficient, and et cetera, to the point where it doesn't take up as much resources as it currently does.
Yeah.
However, of course, I'm not very knowledgeable about that. However, that is something I do see it going. So then those aspects might become a little more manageable, and people might become more accepting of those aspects that might be still a little bit more concern-wise as of right now. In terms of in the classroom, however, I definitely think there's a place for it, but it shouldn't be a substitute for students' critical thinking.
Yeah.
I think that's where we see the issue right now is I think AI is amazing. The capacity it has to be able to take these aspects that it's a resource.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a tool.
So it's a tool.
Yeah.
But being able to use the tool ethically is important.
Yeah.
And even for teachers I currently have a teacher, and sometimes I get a little frustrated every once in a while, is they have trained AI to kind of do work for them.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
And so sometimes I'll look at an assignment and I'll turn it in, and I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's like a subjective piece of writing or something, and the AI will grade it.
They're using
for
AI
the teacher.
to grade it?
Yeah. Sometimes.
Okay.
And so you'll tend to see sometimes these are sometimes issues that students will face, you know, in terms of the bad side of AI. This is where sometimes I'll receive feedback on my work and I'm like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
This is not like what a human would write. You know, because like what I wrote is a subjectively human piece of writing. What I've submitted is something that should be interpreted by a human.
Yeah.
What AI is able to produce is a mechanical, objective, unsubjective way of grading it. And so sometimes that's where you see an issue and you see kind of that gap, right?
Yeah.
Is what the purpose and intent of the product or outcome versus what AI is giving you. And I think even myself, like I will not lie, I do use AI. I use AI. I think one of the really cool ways I use AI is I have so many apps, and I have a very busy schedule, of course. I have so many apps I have to check in the morning, whether that be my weather, my calendar, my notes, my tasks, all these different things.
Yeah.
And I've used Claude to be able to create a morning briefing for myself.
Wow, okay, that's a great idea. I thought about that.
It's a really great use. And these are kinds of uses that show the power of being able to make our lives more efficient.
Yeah.
You know, and take away maybe the brain space we would use to like pick an outfit in the morning, or like making sure that things don't conflict, that all emails are replied to. Like, these are things that AI can genuinely help us and as society make things more effective.
Well, I read just the other day that somebody pointed out something interesting about AI. They said, look, at this point, AI is not meant to be critical. It's meant to please, right? Yeah. So it's supposed to give you a pleasing answer to the question or whatever that it is that you prompted it to do. At some point, it might be more critical. It might come back and ask, Erin, is that really what you wanted to ask? And I'm sure that's not too far away. Or Tanaya, is that really how you want to organize your day? Yeah. Well, no, I asked you.
Exactly. And I think that's where students for assignments, if we're talking about assignment oriented, right, is a lot of students will... Nowadays, you'll tend to see students who take assignments, pop it straight into ChatGPT or something, and get a full reply, maybe jumble a few words here and there and submit it.
Yeah.
You know? Or you'll find a little bit of the little more smarter kids who will put it all in, then will jumble around a few words, also maybe retype the whole thing, you know, making sure that it actually sounds a little more human, put it into a few like AI checkers, and then submit it, you know? And then there's the students who I feel like this is an ethical way of using it, and ways where I use it, especially for prepping for tests, right, is nowadays, especially for like Gemini and these, like they make partnerships for like the SATs and APs.
Can see that. Sure.
And I used it so much when I was studying for my SAT, is you can literally ask Gemini, create full practice tests for me. Can you
that's a brilliant use of that.
Exactly. And these are amazing ways, especially for students who may not have access to prep books, you know, like you don't want to have to pay, like some people may not be able to afford full prep books. You have a free resource. If you have a laptop and an internet, you have a free resource with some of these chat boxes to be able to give you articulate questions, prep, etc., and they can feed you resources. You know, this is where I feel like AI can be used to bridge the gap between maybe even economic statuses between people. You know, like you see the socioeconomic battle we have with certain students being able to access resources. You know, is like this is where AI can bridge that.
Yeah, I could see that.
But it's not what it's currently being used for.
No, I think for the most part, well, I guess it's mixed because it's a mixed use here, and I think the danger is if you think of it that it's going to somehow make you less able to do the work, where to me, if you go back and use it as a tool, it should make you even better at what you do. I mean, I can't draw. I'm not an artist, but I can use one of these platforms to visually create the thing I can't physically create. I don't think that's taking away from my creativity. To me, it's making me more creative. But there might be somebody that says, no, somebody at some point made some image or images that chat is using or whatever to make what you just did, Erin. I said, well, people have been borrowing from Michelangelo since Michelangelo, so there is that too.
I couldn't agree more. There are definitely aspects where AI can develop creativity and aid in being able to make your artistic vision a reality. Totally agree. But then, like you're saying, there are those aspects where it's like it takes and uses information that maybe other artists don't want used to train these chatbots, you know, chatbots. And so that's where I also see that disconnect. You know, there's it's such a duality, you know, with this kind of AI thing going on. But I definitely think there is a space in the classroom. No doubt. There is definitely space. And teachers should use it, especially for those objective things. And I see so many of my teachers use it in an ethical way, like grading MCQs. You know what I mean? Like, it's literally just an A, B, C, or D, or E, you know? And those are the things where maybe a teacher doesn't need to be spending their time to grade it.
They could be prepping for something else.
Exactly. And those are the things where AI could actually help without fault. You know, and those are the things but when we come to like I've mentioned before, those more subjective assignments, that is where we need teachers to be critical and need them to be like, hey, I will grade this because I know what the criteria is and I don't want it to be like, I understand where the student is coming from. I can provide tangible feedback. You know, and that's where, at least for on the teacher side, but then of course on the student side, we're talking about making sure that students understand that it shouldn't take away from you not being able to be critical thinkers. You know, and you'll see so many studies now, of course, like now new and upcoming studies of like students who use AI being genuinely becoming smarter.
Yeah.
But it's because they use it in an ethical way.
It's the way they're using it.
It's
yeah.
the way they use it.
Yeah.
And like myself is like, we use it to prep for our tests. We use it to expand on concepts we don't understand. You know, it's like sometimes a simple Google search cannot give you what you need.
Right.
You know, and the way that a chat box is able to adapt and take your inputs to fully understand what you are confused about,
Yeah.
and then articulate a response that can actually help you understand it the way you, that's where we even see that like students with different learning styles.
Yeah.
You know, this is where it can bridge those gaps because a teacher cannot provide a lesson in every single learning style.
Yeah.
A teacher can only provide one way that they work best in.
It's true.
You know,
Yeah.
and AI can be like, hey, like, yes, maybe my teacher has lecture slides, but I don't work with that. You know, you take those lecture slides, put it into an AI, and tell it to output it in a format that you understand.
Yeah. See, that's a brilliant use for it.
And that's
Yes.
and like it works for me
exactly
as like
what it should
I
be.
am not a very auditory person.
Uh-huh.
And I work very visually. I work in readings and
So
just like
sitting in a class with a lecture must just drive you nuts.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so like that's where you have to be ethical. As me as a student, I'll sometimes be like, hey, do you mind if I record what you're talking about? You know, and like some of my teachers will mind and I'll be like, okay, that's fine. But then I'll take notes, like diligent notes.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll try to listen as hard as I
Yeah.
can and take the notes and then take pictures of my notes and then upload them. Or like I'll be like, hey, can I record it? And then some of these large language models will be able to actually analyze audio.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you could be like, here's my lecture. Can you reteach me everything?
Yeah.
You know? And like that kind of like that learning curve, you know, like people will talk about like you want to, when you have your lecture or whatever content you're learning, you want to probably look at it again 24 hours after and then again maybe
Yeah.
a couple days. It's like so you don't forget it. So
Yeah.
like stuff like that is where AI can like maybe remind you. You can have like notifications on being like, here's a day when you need to review this subject and this, and it will make your work so much easier, but it
Absolutely.
shouldn't be doing your work.
Right. So I have two more questions.
Mm-hmm.
First one is, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I like this question and I hate this
Yeah.
question because
I hate it even more for myself.
is I couldn't tell you exactly,
Sure.
of course, as
Yeah.
anyone would always say, but in 5 years, I would love to see myself, because I'll be in college, of
Yeah.
course, so like talking about just like the surface level
Yep.
stuff. I'll be in college.
Yep.
Hopefully, I will be in a place I love. Hopefully, I'll have friends that support me and teachers and professors that I can talk to. But then also, I think one thing that a lot of students, and something I've taken pride in currently, is yes, I may be a student first, but that doesn't mean I just have to be a student.
Right.
And that's why I have so many other things that I'm passionate about. Like I'm a policy director outside of school and for a nonprofit, and I do media and I do C-SPAN and I do documentary work and I sew and I'm a swimmer and I'm all these other things, you
Yeah.
know? And that's something I want to keep carrying with me in 5
Absolutely.
years.
Yeah.
Is that like I can be more than just a student.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yes, I'm a student first. I care about my academics. I want to learn. I want to grow. But that doesn't mean, especially when you're in college, you get time to pick up a job.
Yeah.
You get time to pursue something that maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone. And these are like, I guess, soft skills and mentalities I want to bring
Yeah.
with me in 5 years. But in terms of like just even like career-wise where I want to be is I definitely would want to be in like an internship that's policy-oriented, or maybe sitting in like a legislative office and working on ledge work. These are things that I would love, like as a ledge aide. These are things that
Yeah.
I would love to do. And even things I'm currently interested in working in constituency work. Just to see, and I think some of the biggest advice that I received ever was that you always want to try things.
Yeah.
Because you don't, like, why would you not want to try things? And I think that's something that I've taken quite literally is before I pursue with a track, I want to try it.
Yeah.
You know, and those are things that I want to do as I continue through my college years is, especially as high schoolers, sometimes you don't have as many opportunities. You're still young.
Absolutely.
You need to have like a high school diploma, maybe a college degree for certain things, right?
Yeah.
And or people may not take you as seriously, you know?
Yeah.
And so these are things that can hinder you. But as you grow, more of those doors that are just like simply like age requirements break.
Yeah.
You know? And that's where I can be like, start dipping my feet into other aspects that I want to explore, you know? Like maybe by the time in 5 years, I can look into like actually what does constitutional law and appellant law look like?
Yeah.
You know? And what does student advocacy really look like? You know? Maybe creating another organization, as I've had the opportunity to now work under so many great people.
Sure.
Maybe creating something now, you know? And that these are things that I really want to see myself in 5 years doing is taking what I've learned in my high school experience and then furthering it
I can see you
through
doing that.
5 years.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. So the last question is, what advice would you give other students who want to get in media?
I think I touched a little bit on this one, but
Yeah.
I would love to see people just do it.
Yeah.
You know, is so many people are stuck to like twiddling their thumbs, thinking about what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And I'd say just do it. You
Yeah.
know, like the Nike slogan, like just do it.
Yeah.
Because I think I would not be where I am if I was stuck in my bubble, kept thinking about what I can or can't do or how young I am. Because I can guarantee you in almost all of the spaces I've been in, I have been the youngest person.
Right, no doubt. But you didn't let that get in your way, did you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think those are things that so many students need to hear is like, you have a passion, pursue it. Like, it's okay if it changes. Like, that's okay. And it can, and it's supposed to change. It's supposed to change as you dive deeper into it. You might realize like, wait, actually, I really don't like this.
Yeah.
You know, then jump out. Find something else. Find a new avenue. Pursue that, you know, until you might find something you maybe don't like. And then maybe if you don't like it, just take a little deviation. And those are things, especially in media, that are super important. You know, it's like I walked into Miss May's classroom and I was like, hey, I really like this and I really like this. But her response was, try it all. You know? And especially in high school. In high school.
That's exactly when you should.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, and you'll find so many people who graduate high school being like, I wish I had done more. I wish I had done more. I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that.
Yeah.
You know? And that's where I feel like I really heeded that advice from people.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yes, even though I might get stressed, I might feel like, hey, I have a lot on my plate every once in a while. But then that's where it's important you take like your mental health days and you delegate and you learn real life skills. Adults nowadays, you know, you're always multitasking. You have family obligations, you have work, you have all these things. Might as well learn it now.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
And those are things that students are like, yeah, I don't have to deal with that until I'm in college, or I don't have to deal with that until like I'm 20. I'm like, well, don't you want to feel like it's easier when you're 20?
Yeah.
You know, like
That's good.
like that's something that I was like, especially with money, like, you know, like I was very passionate about financial literacy and like media. You could do this with media too, is you're like, I was like, I want to learn stocks. I told my dad that. I was like, I want to learn to invest.
Yeah.
You know? And so then he was like, you don't need to do that. I was like, but I kind of want to. You know, like I want to. It's not that I need to.
Right.
I want to. And so then we sat down. I learned more. I started investing the money I was making from my job through like a custodial account and et cetera. And so like these are things you can apply to media. And for youth especially is like you see like, you may not need to learn how to be a great storyteller, or maybe you don't need to know how to use Adobe, but you probably should want to learn.
Yeah.
You know? And I think especially in terms of media skills, these things I put on my resume, and so many people have asked me about it. You know, it's like, it is a little different than some of the policy work I've done, but it actually gives a nuanced perspective to anyone who's interviewing me for a position, you know?
Yeah.
They're like, wait, this is a really cool aspect that not any of our applicants have, you know?
Yeah.
They don't have an Adobe certificate, or they have never anchored on a school news show or episode. And that's why especially media is super cool, is I think it gives whatever path you want to choose, it gives it a little like flavor. It gives it a little
true.
like, hey, okay, this person has more than just that one thing, you know? You definitely want to pursue like whatever your passion is, but media can actually turn whatever your passion is into a visual format for others.
Yeah.
And so try it. I guess that's my big thing is just try it.
I think that's good. I can only imagine your future is very bright. I'm sure it will be.
I would really hope so.
No,
and
I think
know
it will be. Yeah, it will be. All right. Well, that's it for this last episode of the season for Lights, Camera, Learn. Thank you for tuning in. You can catch us on any of your favorite podcast platforms, on our YouTube page, or on our website, secctv.org. Make it a great summer, and we'll see you in the fall. Thanks.